Hello, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Portland's Voter Forum for candidates for Multnomah County Chair. I'm Debbie Kay, Portland League President, and I will moderate this forum. The League is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to making democracy work. We believe that democracy works best when voters are informed about issues and have the opportunity to be engaged in their community. We're presenting this forum to Multnomah County voters so that they can learn more about these four candidates. They are, in alphabetical order, Shariah Mayfield, Commissioner Sharon Myron, Commissioner Lori Stegman, and Commissioner Jessica Vega Peterson. All candidates filing for this office were invited to participate in this forum. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're not yet able to resume our traditional in-person voter forums. We expect to do so for next fall's general election. The League is grateful for support from the Carol and Velma Sailing Foundation, the Weiss Foundation, the League of Women Voters of Portland Education Fund, and our media partner, Metro East Community Media. Under the forum rules agreed by the candidates, each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement, followed by questions that we have prepared, and followed by a 2-minute closing. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question. There will not be rebuttal responses. The candidates have previously agreed to comply with these rules. To determine the order of candidate response, we are using the order and the reversal of order dictated by the current and previous random alphabets drawn by the Oregon Secretary of State before each election. The candidates have previously been advised of the order. We will now begin with opening statements. Commissioner Stegman, you will go first, followed by Ms. Mayfield, Commissioner Myron, and Commissioner Vega Peterson. Commissioner Stegman, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with the League of Women Voters, Debbie. My name is Lori Stegman, and I serve as your Vice Chair on the Multnomah County Board. I'm an immigrant, and I'm the first Asian American to ever serve on the board. I grew up in the Rockwood neighborhood of Gresham, one of the lowest income and most diverse communities in the county, where I've owned a small business for nearly 30 years. I'm running for chair because, frankly, I'm angry and disappointed in what our county has become. The same status quo leadership will continue to lead us down a path of out-of-control taxes, sky-high inflation, and a mass exodus of our businesses and residents. This is unsustainable. And if we don't do something to stop the bleeding, then our region will continue on this downward spiral. As a Gresham City Councilor for 6 years, I'm the only candidate that has actual experience in economic recovery that has resulted in the redevelopment of over 1,200 acres in East County, where we assisted 40 new businesses to relocate, added 700 new jobs with a $62,000 average annual salary, increased access to affordable housing, built a new public safety building, and leveraged $80 million to provide community services that included daycare, medical services, workforce development, and small business services, a market to address the food desert. And this experience is vital as I lead the change to redevelop nearly 90 acres of county-owned property that will be transformed into housing, a workforce center, and green space. As we face our two most pressing crises of homelessness and public safety, my question for voters is, do you want to treat the symptoms or do you want to solve the problems? I want to solve the problems. And the only way we can do that is by providing economic stability for all. We must go upstream by offering people access to opportunities to make better choices for themselves and by addressing generational poverty, trauma, addiction, and racism. That's how we make our communities stronger and safer, by focusing on economic stability.
Thank you very much. I need to ask you
how we can do that.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield, your opening statement.
Thank you so much for hosting this. So Shariah Mayfield, I'm an employment rights attorney. I have background at the county, state, and federal level doing policy work, legal work. I worked at the DOJ, worked for Senator Wyden. And the reason I'm running in this race is because I am very, very disillusioned with the current leadership and the status quo. Unfortunately, the three commissioners in this meeting with me are the status quo, and I'm the only viable non-commissioner, non-politician running right now on a platform of rapid action to address the homeless crisis, our livability crisis, and the mental health and drug addiction crisis that have not been met with the urgency that they need. So how am I different from the other opponents? Number one, I am critically focused on short-term solutions to the homeless crisis, and particularly unsanctioned camping. I would be focusing on enforcement of the existing camp ban laws in tandem with humane alternatives. I believe I'm the only candidate here who has said she will use enforcement unequivocally if needed. I do not think that that is the first resort, but it is a resort. Number one, we need to get people off the sidewalks. It's inhumane for them. It's dangerous for them. It's biohazardous, and there is human waste all around our county that just cannot go unfettered as it is currently. That means ramping up short-term options like RV parks, mobile homes, shelter options, low and high barrier options, and also getting more creative. Tiny homes. Can we expand a home share program for people who are struggling to afford housing? But really having these alternative options and then going to the people on the streets and saying, hey, we're not just going to tell you to go to the shelter. You can go to a shelter, a tiny home, an RV. And if they still refuse and say, no, I want to stay out here, while they have mental illness, that's just not safe. And so I would also expand mental health and drug addiction treatment as much as possible as well. And it looks like I'm out of time, but votemayfield.com if you want to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Myron, your turn.
Yeah, thank you. I am running for chair because the work of the county is my passion. The county is what I think of as the heart and soul of local government. It's public health, mental health, human services, homeless services. And I've been extremely frustrated watching crises worsen in these areas when I know we can be doing so much better. And I know it because I see it and see where we can intervene and how we can do better. And I know we can implement these programs at the county. I am an ER doctor. I am a lawyer as well. And I volunteer directly in medicine, serving people who live outside who are houseless. I have unique skills, expertise, experience, and background at this exact moment in time with this confluence of crises to move our county forward. But what I've learned at being at the county for a few years and why it's so important to have the experience having been at the county is you do need to be in the role of chair to drive the work in the direction because the chair controls the agenda, money, and power at the county. Every day as we see some form of inhumanity when we walk out the door, whether it's people living in squalor and literal garbage on our streets, if it's people in mental health crises being taken to jail instead of treatment, this is not okay. But every day I see government and I watch how it happens and attempt to intervene and am facing it truly is a status quo that needs a different intervention. I see people acting like it's okay. And I'm angry because we shouldn't be patient when people are living and dying in increasing numbers outside. And we shouldn't be tolerant of systems that perpetuate the status quo. We need change from someone who understands the systems inside and out. We need big picture thinking, vision, data-driven strategies, integrated and coordinated systems, and accountability for spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Thank you.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson, your turn.
Thank you. I'm Jessica Vega-Peterson. I use she, her pronouns. When my husband and I got married 16 years ago, we bought a home in East Portland. I was a technology project manager and my husband had a new small business. Hazelwood was a neighborhood that we could afford and it was where we could be part of our community. And we've been in this house ever since, same house, same block, but it is a rapidly changing community. East Portland was unincorporated county land that became a diverse, densely populated part of the city. It's an area made up of people all over the world who work to better this community, but there are a lot of times they're just working hard to keep their heads above water. I ran my first campaign on sidewalks and on the dangerous speeds that people drive through my neighborhood. Community came together to support me, and together we got sidewalks and so much more for the people of East County. And I've brought that power building approach to every issue I've tackled at the state legislature and on the county commission. As the first Latina to serve in the Oregon House, I championed in bringing paid sick leave to every Oregon worker, passing tax policies that help seniors stay in their homes, raising Oregon's minimum wage, and getting coal out of our energy mix. At Multnomah County, I work to ensure cleaner air and a commitment to renewable energy. I work with neighborhood associations, small businesses, and schools to site shelters and supportive services in my district. I fight to get COVID response and resources for our BIPOC communities most impacted by the pandemic. And I led the fight for preschool for all, an investment in quality early childhood education for our children and our workers that will have generational impact. I have the experience, the record of accomplishment, and the vision to meet this moment and lead Multnomah County in the right direction. I know and have brought people together to get big things done. And that's why I have the broadest and deepest coalition of organizations and community leaders in this race, including the workers of Multnomah County, the Portland Firefighters, Apano, Latino Network, Oregon League of Conservation Voters, Oregon Working Families Party, Pro-Choice Oregon, and many others, who know I am the best person to lead Multnomah County forward.
Thank you. Our first question will go first to Commissioner Vega Peterson, and after that, the order will be Commissioner Myron, Ms. Mayfield, and Commissioner Stegman. The first question is, Multnomah County and the City of Portland collaborate through the Joint Office of Homeless Services to address the needs of unhoused individuals in our community, and you've all discussed this problem. What measures would you recommend to more effectively meet those needs in conjunction with or coalition with the City of Portland?
Yeah, I mean, as chair of Multnomah County, the housing and homelessness crisis will absolutely be my #1 priority. And I think one of the important things to do in regards to the Joint Office's Homeless Services is really about bringing the leadership at the county and the city and even at Metro together to really talk about the comprehensive approach that leverages the new resources that we have thanks to the supportive housing services measure to build more permanent supportive housing so that people can be successful and stay in their housing. We need to be investing in shelters and shelter alternatives to make sure that we are getting people safely off the streets into places where they can help stabilize. And we have to be investing in preventing people from becoming homelessness. We know because of the COVID pandemic, we have a lot of people who had trouble paying their rent. We have a lot of people who are carrying debt to their landlords, and we need to make sure that they can stay housed so that our crisis doesn't get any worse. And we have to be doing a better job of making sure that we are working together and not finger pointing or placing blame about what is the city's job and what is the county's job. When it comes to things like picking up trash, when it comes to things like providing hygiene services, when it comes to about making sure that we are providing and building a system to provide behavioral health supports, the county and the city have to be working together to do that. And that is the approach that I will bring. I've done it again and again in my career as a public servant, of bringing people together to get those solutions done. We also have to work to make sure that we're seizing every opportunity to prioritize good governance and accountability through good data and transparent practices. So those are just some of the things we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next respondent is Commissioner Myron, and I'll remind you all that these questions have 90-second responses.
So hard, 90 seconds is so short. But I would actually dive in deeply from the get-go. I think that there are a lot of talking points out there that sound good. I've called them, when the Oregonian endorsed me, I referred to them as the talking points of the status quo. And I do not believe we need to invest more money. I do not believe, contrary to what is said by maybe some of the other commissioners, that we're doing the best we can. We are not. We do not need more money, and we can be doing better right now. We need systems that function. We actually need to have a joint office contract which is going to be renegotiated this coming year with the new chair. It is not joint currently. As someone who's worked deeply in this area and as a lawyer and has read the contract, this is a county department that we sort of deign to share with the city. This needs to be a joint collaborative effort. We need a system of contracting where we hold organizations accountable for outcomes and what they give to us. We need to track data in a way, not just the way that we are currently told it will be tracked, which is not accurate, but in a way that is meaningful for people living outside on the street and the providers. We need systems that coordinate and are effective relate to behavioral health and more. And that's the expertise I bring to jump in at the get-go and not have more and more infinite meetings.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield, your response.
Great. I think the most important thing here is to make sure we have the right vision between the city and the county, and we don't right now. The city has been more focused on short-term solutions. The county almost exclusively focused on affordable housing and permanent housing solutions. And again, we have to separate out affordable housing issues from homelessness. They overlap, but the main issue with homelessness, as we all know with our own eyes, is mental health and drug addiction. The majority of people on the streets have substance abuse issues, some of them severe issues, where if you just put them in a house, it won't solve the problem. So what we need to do is, number one, because a lot of these people are not making the best decisions for themselves, is get the people off the sidewalks who are camping in tents, in architecture. In London, they call it offensive architecture. We can't have that in public spaces and exclude the public from using spots that are covered in waste, that are covered in trash. It's not humane to the people living out there. We need to get them into hygienic alternatives. And when I say alternatives, I mean multiple. So working with the city on those short-term solutions, being an ally with the city rather than pitting the county against their solutions. When they come up with shelter options, even if I don't agree that it's the best option, we need those alternatives. RV parks, tiny homes, sanctioned camp areas. This is huge. Having areas where you can camp and where you can't camp. We already have laws on that. So laws without enforcement are simply recommendations. We need to expand mental health and drug addiction treatment, including mandatory if people are dangerous, and we need to ramp up alternatives and enforce the laws. That's the vision.
Thank you. And Commissioner Stegman, your response, please.
Thank you. I'm really excited to announce a brand new initiative that we've just rolled out today called Move In Multnomah. We have $4 million set aside to provide and connect renters with landlords. And what we are offering is 1 year's rent, a damage guarantee to landlords, as well as a 211 24/7 service provider line. And these apartments will come with supportive services. So this is what's commonly kind of referred to as a master lease. Right now, there is about 40,000 units that are vacant. So we're actually probably about 30,000 vacant, and we need about 40,000. And I've been working with the 3,000 Challenge PDX, and their goal is to get rapid rehousing for people that are houseless. And their argument, which is a valid one, is that yes, of course, we need to build more supportive housing, more units, but there's also already a large inventory. And if we can just get people rehoused more quickly, that will go a long ways into solving our houseless crisis. The other thing that we can work around is the fentanyl and meth crisis, and working with the Portland police so it's not just the Joint Office of Homeless Services. There are all sorts of divisions and departments within the city of Portland that we can work better and partner with the city of Portland. So, and also the zoning, and so that we could maybe retrofit commercial buildings.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Ms. Mayfield, and after that, Commissioner Myron, Commissioner Vega-Peterson, and Commissioner Stegman. What additional steps should the county take to reach the goals outlined in the Climate Action Plan?
Great question. I think the government needs to be modeling the objectives that are identified in the Climate Action Plan. And I've put a lot of emphasis on Objective 4. I believe it's Objective 4, which is really just changing people's behaviors in the way that they interact with the environment. So that means, in my opinion, expanding paratransit services to make it more easily accessible to get on public transit. I live out in Gresham. It takes an hour and I believe 41 minutes to take transit to downtown. And it has a 20-minute 1 mile walk in there. With my back injury and that stuff, it's just not feasible. And while we do have some services for people who have disabilities, we really need to also be thinking about people who are in areas that are hard to reach, that are in hills. They can't bike, they can't go 3 hours a day on their bike. So really making it more accessible so that people can use public transit to reduce their carbon emissions and in a way that does not burden them more. And if it does burden them, giving them offsets and incentives, because people cannot be burdened any further with higher gas taxes, tolls, things like that. If we're trying to get people to save the environment, the poor should not be bearing the hugest brunt of climate action. And if they are, they need to be compensated, get stipends, and offset that burden that's going to be placed on them as we move forward and prioritize the climate. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Myron, your turn.
Thank you. I would do a couple of things. First of all, since our climate action plan has expired and that has not been revisited yet currently at the county, I would be pushing for us to have a new climate action plan instituted. And as this will take time and also needs to involve impacted communities, a number of communities in a climate justice approach, it is going to take time. We will need to do that process, but the climate crisis is urgent. It is truly a crisis. So we need to be taking action in the meantime, and things that I believe in. I really love the concept of the paratransit services. I also support and will be pushing for climate resiliency hubs in all of our neighborhoods. And we need to be doing not mitigation and prevention, we need to respond as well. And we see the intersections of health and climate we saw in the severe weather last year. And we need to be addressing that. And we need to push our authority as the local health authority, the local board of health, so that we can think of things differently, do innovative approaches like I'm working on with the CEI hub, the Central Energy Infrastructure Hub, to devise ways to not be dependent on fossil fuels, but with the involvement of not just neighbors, community members, people impacted, the fuel industry themselves, to work on novel solutions to prevent that climate crisis.
Thank you.
Impact.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Peterson, your turn.
Thank you. So one of the first things that I did when I became a Multnomah County Commissioner was really jump into the work that was happening on working with the city of Portland and Multnomah County to get a 100 by 50 renewable energy commitment, saying that both the city and the county will commit to having 100% renewable energy and clean energy for in the transportation sector, in the energy sector, across the board by 2050. That is a goal that I think we can build, but it is just an example of the way that I really prioritize working on climate issues and bring people together to get concrete things done. The climate crisis is really the existential threat of our times. And as county chair, I'll make sure that we are ending our reliance on fossil fuels. It's one of the most important things we can do as government. The climate action plan hasn't been updated. It's because the county now is focusing really on a climate justice initiative, which is really looking at how we can empower communities on the front lines of the climate crisis to lead in developing solutions that reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. I will continue as county chair to really champion this work. I'm really proud of the way that I brought forward the first environmental justice principles for Multnomah County as a commissioner, and I worked really closely with frontline communities to create this and to put those principles into place. I'm going to speed up the electrification of our transportation sector and in our business sector by partnering with utility companies, nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, and businesses to do that. And I'm very proud to be the only candidate in this race endorsed by the Oregon League of Conservation Voters and the Sierra Club.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman, your response.
Thank you. Yes, I've been working with Keith Wilson over at Titan Freight, and Keith has been working on getting more usage of renewable diesel and phasing out fossil fuel dependence, especially in our trucking industry. And so I've been working collaboratively with our legislature. And the other unique lever that we have to pull at Multnomah County is that we could also require that when we put out contracts and when we hire subcontractors. So the county can really use their purchasing power and their procurement power to hold the rest of our contractors and subcontractors to higher standards, and by adopting more use of renewable diesel. The other thing is I worked collaboratively with Commissioner Ryan's office around preventing the expansion of the Zenith facility. So they ended up denying their permit, which would have brought additional fossil fuels into our community. And we already know that that critical energy infrastructure hub is extremely dangerous and volatile. The other thing that I've been working on is heat mapping and heat islands. I just planted over 70 trees in the Rockwood neighborhood because many of those communities, especially in low income areas, are hit first and hardest, which is why I'm working on resilience hubs so that when we have an extreme heat event, we have solar micropowered community centers where people can go and be safe.
Thank you very much. Before I go on to the next question, I want to remind our listeners that you are listening to the League of Women Voters of Portland's Voter Forum or podcast for the candidates running for Multnomah County Chair. Our next question will go first to Commissioner Myron, and then to Ms. Mayfield, Commissioner Stegman, and Commissioner Vega Peterson. And our question is, what would be your priorities for spending the supportive housing services dollars flowing to the county from the May 2020 Metro ballot measure? Commissioner Myron.
So the way that I had interpreted the measure and what I voted for is for people who are chronically homeless, severely have been homeless for over a year and have severe disabling conditions, people living outside on our streets, maybe in shelter, to have a pathway and have access to permanent housing, deeply affordable, with the profound services they need to support them. And that's where I would prioritize investing the resources. We need the pathways for people. What I think of as the 3,000 challenge, for example, right now, when I heard it mentioned, it was getting people living outside who are homeless into 3,000 units of existing housing. And then provide the supportive services they need. That's the kind of thing that the measure should be addressing. But that involves a continuum, it involves accountability, it involves data collection, and it involves a goal that you can be building toward. Right now, we don't have any of those things. So we have to change the way that we are accounting how our resources are used in order to achieve defined outcomes, which also have not been put forward either. So there's a lot of work we need to be doing in that arena. We're almost starting from scratch, I feel, in some ways. And we need to be looking at getting people housed with the housing they need, but figuring out the steps to do it. Thank you.
Ms. Mayfield, your response, please.
Sure. And it's interesting, Commissioner Myron mentions the 3,000 challenge, which is, in my opinion, a housing first challenge to get people off the streets into housing. It sounds fine in theory, but in reality, Dr. Zapata had a tweet, I believe on March 8th, who was supporting the 3,000 challenge. And when I calculated the math on the units available for the $19 million that they would cost, it was $163,000 per unit. We do not have that kind of money to be spending on one single unit. So to me, I would rather help a lot more than 3,000 people. We could have up to 20,000 homeless people, get them into stable shelter or alternative housing options first. And that's the cheapest way to go. Sanctioned camp areas barely cost anything. You just need to give hygiene sanitation services. 40% of people on the streets may actually prefer to just keep camping based on the querying that I have done with people on the streets. So creating a ladder is my approach. We really need to focus on damage control number one, raising the floor. I keep saying this, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Get the people on the streets into some fixed address so they can have services, so they can get clean, so they can get on disability benefits, so we can connect them. When they're out on the streets, 66% of them have not even been reached out by case management workers. So very first step is get them in fixed addresses with services, and from there create a ladder into permanent independent housing, not housing your own house first when they have severe mental health and drug addiction issues, as we all know, rehabilitate them, and then they can build their way into their own independent housing.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman, your response, please.
Thank you. I would go back to rapid rehousing. We have thousands of units out there. And what people need is they need enough money for a deposit and maybe the first month's rent. So again, that goes back to what we're talking about is the 3,000 challenge. So I disagree with some of my colleagues that of course we need to build more housing, but we also have existing housing. So why would we, focus on just sheltering people, which doesn't solve the problem when we can actually house people? What solves homelessness is housing. The other thing I would work on is expanding our behavioral resource center in downtown Portland. We'll have about 32 beds of transitional housing. This is just a pilot project where people will have the opportunity to come in and transition into higher levels of housing. I envision this being a pilot and then expanding that out to all 4 districts within Multnomah County. The other thing is just building more transitional, more alternative shelters. So in Troutdale, we are building a alternative shelter. We have a houseless population. And so if we can geographically offer people a better place, a safer place, then that's the way to get people into that continuum of services. And I would also create a service center site in East County so that we can connect houseless individuals to services.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Peterson, your response.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, like the supportive housing services measure gives us this opportunity that we have never had before because voters have supported making a serious investment of billions of dollars into this system over 10 years so that we are able to do things and address the crisis of homelessness in ways that we haven't before. And as county chair, I will prioritize making sure that we are addressing the crisis that's on our street, and we're making sure that we're doing what research has shown and getting people into supportive housing where they can be successful and have the best chance of staying housed permanently. And so we have to work with our partners at Metro, we have to work with other counties, and we have to work with the city because the city is still an important partner in this work in expanding our shelter to capacity. And we have to do that with traditional shelter. We have to do it with things like pod villages and safe rest and safe parking sites. And there's work being done on all of those things. But I think people also need to know that it is also takes time and it takes money to do those kinds of things. And so we have to continue to be using rental assistance, rapid rehousing, the master leasing, as Commissioner Stegman had talked about, of getting people into a more stable place and getting the both physical and mental health services that they need in order to do this. And it's going to be important to make sure that we're using the supportive housing services money to get the data to make sure that we are getting the outcomes that we want and communicating that to voters.
Thank you. Our next question is on ranked choice voting. And the question goes first to Commissioner Stegman, and then to Commissioner Myron, Ms. Mayfield, and Commissioner Vega Peterson. And the question is, ranked choice voting has been increasingly proposed for Oregon elections. What are your thoughts on adopting ranked choice voting for our elections and why? Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, I think ranked choice voting, I think mathematically it makes sense, although the algorithm is extremely hard to explain to voters. So I do support it, but I'm not sure that it's as easily understood. And I think that will be the greatest challenge. So I do support it, but I think that there'll be a huge communication issue in explaining to voters, why this is a better option for the electorate.
Thank you. Commissioner Myron.
Yeah. So I believe in the concept of ranked choice voting, and I think that, and there are different ways to implement that. There's star vote, there's all sorts of different approaches. And the concept behind it is sound, that ideally it can result in a fairer result if people are able to rank their choices, and we do a top 2 system. But there are ways to game various aspects of some of the systems that are out there. And I would want to ensure that if I'm not adverse to implementing a ranked choice voting system, but I would want to be sure that the mechanism by which we did it was fair, had a proven track record and been successful, and that we address some of the unintentional consequences that we might have seen crop up in other jurisdictions.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield, ranked choice voting.
I would agree with the prior two answers as well. In theory, I'm definitely open to it, and I think there's a way to make it work. Not being an extreme expert on that policy, I think it really just depends on the exact proposal. You can have ranked choice only for governor position, for example, or Senate positions, which are potentially more critical, or for national representation type positions versus more locally. I do have a slight concern that if it were for every single election, primaries and general, that it might start to get complicated and people just may not partake at all. I know sometimes when something looks complicated to me, I might just not do it at all. So particularly when it comes to something that's voluntary or discretionary, I want it to be simple when you're asking for extra time from me. So people, I really want more people to be engaged and vote. I think there is a way to make it work. It could be just the top two candidates, because there's even ranked voting where you could do top 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
You could rank all of them, and then that gets really complicated. So I really just think it depends on the proposal and how it would be rolled out. And I don't have that proposal in front of me, but in theory, I do support it. Thanks.
Thanks. And Commissioner Vega Peterson.
So I am really intrigued with the idea of ranked choice voting. I'm really interested to see how the proposed change of the city government that the city charter committee has done and what they're proposing in terms of districts with different types of voting within the district for multiple candidates is going to work. I think that we need to be doing what we can to make sure that we are having elections be accessible to people and getting candidates that reflect this community. When somebody came and talked to me about ranked choice voting, I think it was like about 4 years ago when they were considering it. I said, look, we have on Multnomah County Commission right now, we have an all-woman board. We have a majority women of color board. We are doing good things right now in terms of how the county set up of getting people who represent the community on there. But that being said, I think that I want to see, how this would work and a little bit more about the specifics. I did listen to, I've listened to different podcasts and interviews about this. And the thing for me that's, it was even confusing for me to understand. So I think we have to do a lot of work of educating voters and being very clear about how it would work and what the benefits and outcomes would be.
Thank you all. Well, you lead into our next question, which will go first to Commissioner Stegman, and it is indeed about charter review. The people answering following Commissioner Stegman in the order will be Commissioner Vega Peterson, Ms. Mayfield, and Commissioner Myron. And the question is, the county is undergoing its charter review now, as it does every 6 years, as opposed to Portland, which is every 10. What would you want to change in the Multnomah County Charter to enhance its effectiveness? Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Debbie. Well, I think we are term limited right now. Each of the commissioners can only serve 2 4-year terms. So there was a proposal the last go around to extend that for an additional term to 12 years. I feel like, for instance, I'm working on something called the Vance Project, where it's 5.5 acres, or I'm sorry, 90 acres that I'm in the process of redeveloping, but I've been working on it for 5.5 years. And the vision is to redevelop it and to create housing, to create a workforce center and a green space. We may also be moving animal services, relocating it over there. So this is a long range project that is going to require funding and a lot of planning, a lot of partnerships with our different jurisdictions. So I really would like, I think I could get a lot farther along in 12 years than I could in 8 years to see this project come to fruition. So I think having that extended time would be really beneficial. And there's some other things, but looks like I may have run out of time.
Thank you. You have another moment if you need another moment.
Let's see. I'll just go ahead and stop there.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Vega Peterson, charter review.
So I always like describe the every 6 year county charter review process as a little bit like a political science lab where like these ideas about changing government and impacting government have a chance to get tried out. I think that, a couple of the things that have come up before, including, as Commissioner Stegman was talking about, of having like a 12-year, 3-term limit instead of the 2-term, that was actually on the ballot last time and voters voted it down. But I do think that there is merit in having someone being able to work on things over about a 12-year period. For me, working on the earthquake ready Burnside Bridge, right? I have been working on that for 5.5 years as well. It's going to continue, longer than 8 years. So those are just a couple of examples. But I think the most important one is really looking at the role of the county commission and then the sheriff's office. We have limited authority as the county board, even as the county chair, because of the sheriff is an independently elected official who has very much control over the policies and work that happens in that office, including in the jails and the corrections and the law enforcement side. So I think that that's something where when you realize things like whether or not tear gas is going to be allowed, or how exactly we are doing policies within the jail around training, those are things that the board right now doesn't have authority over. And so I think that is something that's important to be looked at. I also think that in some of the things that we have been trying and working on, it is good to use that county charter to look at it. I think one of the things is looking at the redistricting. Right now, redistricting is, I think I'm out of time, but redistricting is something that we're very limited in how we do because of how it's written in the charter.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield, the county charter.
Sure. I think my top priority, this is in the charter and in general, is improving and encouraging more digital democracy. And so requiring and creating an online portal through the commission where people can be more politically engaged online. And as we move into the 21st century, we need to start thinking about not just having, we're in the pandemic now, but even before the pandemic, we would have these sort of town halls frequently, and really to get voters involved and informed, we need to start catering to their schedules and their lifestyles. And so that means if you had one portal, for example, that would be required, where you would have to engage, you would have to have a set amount of state of the county addresses. So you're constantly checking in with the people, informing them about what's going on, having polls, having surveys, having areas where they can comment kind of in a collaborative communal type setting. This really should be central to any of our democratic systems, is the ability to engage freely and commonly and easily in one centralized place, and especially at the county commission level, where we're expending potentially a budget of up to almost $3 billion. I would be focusing a lot on changing the charter to require that sort of engagement and that informed voter engagement that we just don't have right now. Most people don't know what's happening in the commission, and that's part of the problem. So focusing on that. I don't agree with extending term limits. I think it's convenient that two politicians who are, in my opinion, career politicians would like to be in there for 12 years, but as a regular constituent and as chair myself, I don't think that lends itself to coming out of potential political stagnation. And we need fresh ideas all the time. And that's what I'm bringing here, is fresh ideas, fresh vision. And that's a good thing. If I were chair, I would also be encouraging someone else to come in with fresh ideas as well.
Thank you. And Commissioner Myron, the county charter.
Yeah, there are a couple of issues. First of all, I believe that we need to improve and make more broad the consolidated power of the chair, which might seem counter for the position I am currently applying for, but I have seen how that role and the way that it has the power over the department heads and the budget and all of the work at the county, how that consolidation of power in a single individual can actually be stagnating and be a problem. And so I think we need a broader role for the chair that can be addressed by charter. I also believe that we need to, at some point, I don't know, this would be city and county charter, we need to merge the city and county. I mean, we have an ineffective, dysfunctional government at the local level, and there is so much overlap, structural challenges, finger pointing. We're fortunate when we have people that are collaborative in the spaces, and we have a lot of collaborative people, I think, right now at different levels. But we need to put this together like any other grown-up jurisdiction of our size in the nation. And so I think that that's what we should focus on, maybe with a glide path for the next charter, probably the one after that, but we need to be talking about it. And the timing for our charter review process is so brief. We start and we have, I think it's in the charter. It's like months, as opposed to say the city, where I think it's 2 years, that they can actually dig in, have meaningful reform because they have a longer process to engage and get the feedback. So having the charter vote on lengthening the time for the charter review process, I think, is another important thing.
Thank you. Before we go to our next question, for our viewers and listeners, you are listening to the League of Women Voters of Portland's Voter Forum or podcast for the candidates for Multnomah County Chair. And I've just been informed that we are out of time. So we will move to we're all out of time. We will move on to your closing statements. And the order of closing statements is first Ms. Mayfield, and then Commissioner Myron, Commissioner Vega-Peterson, and Commissioner Stegman. So Ms. Mayfield, please go ahead with your 2-minute closing statement.
Sure. If you're tired of the status quo, then don't vote for one of the sitting commissioners running against me, these incumbents who want to get a promotion to be chair. Instead, vote for someone who has the vision to pull us out of these emergencies that we've been in. We've been in a homeless crisis or a homeless emergency for over 6 years. This is not a new issue. And we have commissioners running against me saying they support housing, they support these solutions, but they themselves are a majority and have not led to the solutions we need. Instead, the problems have exploded under their watch. And why would you give a promotion to somebody who's already done a poor job? So what we need is rapid laser focused vision on enforcing camp ban laws, on getting people off the streets into fixed addresses, into creating humane and compassionate alternatives where people can actually get the treatment they need, the services they need, to expand dual diagnosis, mental health and drug addiction centers where you can get treatment for both of those issues at the same time, instead of having to jump through hoops. That should be voluntary, it should be free or cheap, and it should be easy to access. If we really care about mental health and drug addiction, treatment should be as easy as fast food. I keep saying that over and over again. And same with the homeless crisis. We need to focus on affordable housing. We need permanent housing, absolutely. But when it comes to homelessness, we really need to be addressing the meth crisis, the drug addiction crisis. We need to be using the laws that are on the books. We need to expand civil commitment of people who are dangerous or violent on the streets. We just don't have the proper vision right now in the county. And I'm not confident that promoting somebody who's running against me will change the current reality that we're in right now. And so I would love to come in, draw upon the experience of my opponents, use their experience, but also set the vision, because that's what the county chair does. And I am the only one unequivocally committed to ending unsanctioned camping, the garbage crisis that we're in, the drug addiction and the mental health crisis that we're in. And I have a background in prison work, in criminal defense, in criminal appeals, in federal government, and I can get it done. So vote for Mayfield this May for Multnomah County Chair if you want something new.
Thank you. Commissioner Myron, your turn for closing.
Great, thank you. So I support very different solutions from what we are doing now, and I have a very clear record demonstrating what those solutions would be, which align with the idea of responding urgently to the crisis in our streets. VoteSharon.com. There are solutions that will address the crisis at scale in a way that people living outside, who I talk to regularly as a doctor providing medical care on the streets, have said that they want. We have the ability to do that, and it has been frustrating because the current leadership is what is pushing the status quo, and the talking points expressed by fellow commissioners who haven't worked in this arena, who don't see the bigger picture systems, are also echoing the status quo in terms of our responses to homelessness and housing. We need urgency right now because people are dying, and it is a matter of stopping the bleeding. And I think about, we're at a tipping point right now. I think about a book of dot to dots. And right now we have some scattered dots for some systems, but we're missing a whole bunch of dots, and we're missing the connections between them. And I will connect the dots on a human side by fostering relationships and collaborating with my colleagues who have tremendous skills and would do incredible work continuing on the board with me in the city and with the community. And I'll do it at the systems level by building accountability, data-driven strategies, and transparency. Putting those two things together is what will make the difference. And I think some of Shariah's ideas are great, and they actually echo some things that I have been proposing. But having the knowledge of the systems that you need to be changing is essential if you are going to be leveraging those opportunities to change the status quo, which is absolutely needed. And we need to be
Thank you.
doing things differently.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Peterson, your closing, please, 2 minutes.
So I think everybody who's watching these videos is here because you care about the county and you care about the people here. And you recognize that Multnomah County needs strong and bold leadership. We need a county chair who understands the challenges that our county faces, who sees the path forward, and who can weave together a coalition to meet this moment and create the changes that we urgently need. That is why I'm running for county chair, because it's exactly what I've been doing right here in this community for the past 2 decades. I have never done it alone. My leadership always starts with a broad table that includes communities that are most impacted by these issues, but it's a leadership that gets results, like I did with Preschool for All, where we set up a plan, we got the system in place, and now we are building it to address a huge issue in our society. In these next 4 years, Multnomah County needs to meet its challenge using proven collaborative leadership. The challenges that we're facing, the size and the complexity of those challenges absolutely require it. As a Latina, as a mother, as an East Portland resident, I have the life experience to lead with compassion by bringing more voices to the table. I have proven time and time again at the state and local level that I can get big, audacious things done. And I have a huge group of people who are with me in this fight. The race for Multnomah County Chair is one of the most critical on the ballot this May. And we need a competent leader who is able to step into the job running the 3rd largest government in the state on day one and tackle the work of addressing the complex issues that our county faces. Housing and hostelessness, community safety, racial inequality, climate change, because she has a bold vision of the future and a track record of accomplishing major results through collaborative work. I am that leader, and I have the backing of a wide range of organizations, community leaders supporting me. And I encourage you to learn more about me and to join my team at jessicavegapeterson.com, where you can find information and my plans on addressing a lot of the issues that the county is going to face. Thank you.
Commissioner Stegman, your turn for closing. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, everybody has a why we volunteer, why we work hard, and why we care so deeply about the things that matter most to us. My why began in 1960. You may have heard of the famous Holt airlift, where over 3,000 Korean orphans were adopted by American families. I was one of those babies. And while I'm incredibly blessed to have been adopted by a loving family, we struggled with food and housing insecurity. My dad was a logger and he broke his back in his late 30s, and our family survived barely on state disability checks, food stamps, powdered milk, and the stigma of being poor. But because I had access to public assistance at the most critical times in my life, I was able to break the cycle of poverty. And that's why I'm running. I want to ensure that everyone has those same opportunities to not just survive, but to thrive. And right now, we know there are too many people struggling just to make it through the night. But my vision for the county can change the trajectory that we're on. And with your support, I will create a new homeless service center to connect people to housing services, increase emergency and alternative shelters, facilitate master leases to rapidly rehouse people, and move more people into permanent supportive housing. I'll create an office of reentry services to prevent people from churning through our criminal justice system, and update our civil commitment laws and create a team similar to the Portland Street Response. I'll create a 24/7 first responder drop-off site and detox center with urgency. I'll expand behavioral health resource centers in all 4 districts of the county and create an economic development and workforce stability department to connect people to jobs and focus on economic recovery. I believe in this community, and I know that together we can and we must restore our region to its grandeur and beauty. I'm the only candidate with the knowledge and experience to do that, and by challenging the status quo is how we get there. I'm ready to do that, and I hope you are too. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you my vision of what the county can be as your next chair.
Thank you very much. And thank you to our listeners and our watchers. This concludes today's voter forum among the candidates for Multnomah County Chair. We thank each of the candidates for their participation. Audience members, please share this forum recording with your family and friends. Informed voters are powerful voters. If you were registered to vote by April 26th, you should receive your ballot by the first week of May. As with all Oregon elections, it is mail-in only. Go Oregon. To be counted, ballots must be postmarked by Tuesday, May 17th at 8 p.m. You can also find a drop-off location near you by checking www.vote411.org. This is Debbie Kay for the League of Women Voters of Portland. Thank you for joining us today, for watching, for listening. Your vote is your voice. And remember, your vote counts.